Explain like I'm 5. Why do problematic flights require a fighter jet escort? What could a fighter jet do if a plane goes rogue in a terrorism situation? Surely they can't push the plane in a certain direction to prevent them causing harm. The plane is too big, and that's a recipe for disaster all round. Shooting the plane down has its own complications, especially if flying over populated area. What could they actually do in a code red situation? If the plane is hijacked and terrorists are in control, the fighter jets will absolutely shoot the plane down. It's essentially a lose-lose situation, where shooting down the plane will kill all on board and potentially many on the ground. And doing nothing could result in a magnitude more fatalities like 9/11. The idea is to stop the jet with the least amount of fatalities, such as bringing it down over the ocean versus over a populated area. If they did have to bring it down over a populated area, it's to keep it from getting to a major population center, i.e., upstate NY versus New York City. To shoot the plane down. Sure, it could cause problems if shot down over a populated area, but most areas aren't populated, much less densely. And as we saw from 9/11, what would be worse, a plane being shot down and destroying and damaging a few houses, or hitting a building with thousands of people in it? Plus, having someone that could take you down at any second could unlikely but possible exert additional pressure on the terrorists such that they might decide to back down. After 9/11, the plane would almost certainly be shot down. We will no longer risk people turning commercial jets into missiles. I'm not super knowledgeable, just something else that crossed my mind. I'm assuming most likely the hijacked plane has shut off its transponders. Having the escorts there, if nothing else, gives them eyes on the plane to try to see what its plans may be. The complications are just an accepted part of the gambit here. Either you bring down that plane by force on your own terms, knowing more or less what will happen if you do, or you do nothing and leave that plane free to do who knows what else. You also have to set an example for other future rogue planes. If you do nothing because you're too afraid of the collateral damage you'll cause, that just teaches future would-be hijackers that the jets following them aren't a threat. Demands without teeth aren't demands. They are suggestions. Shoot it down. At this point, it's a terrible numbers game. Lose 500 people on the plane, and where it lands, or 3,000 people if when it crashed into a full high-rise. It can tell people on the ground how fast the plane is going, what direction it's going, whether it changes altitude or course. It can look at the windows to see what might be happening in the cockpit. Or maybe some passengers are sending messages in the windows. It can shoot down the plane over a safer area than the middle of a huge city, if worse comes to worse. I'm going to add a bit of positivity with a little-known protocol that exists in many air forces. While the end game is to absolutely shoot down a threat, there are steps in between, and in the case of commercial airliners, the first approach is to attempt a forced landing. This can be achieved using 27mm guns used as warning shots, or even a precise hit to aviation controls that will prevent climbing, course changes, or sustained airspeed. If the plane is going to be crashed into a target, killing everyone on board, and you can't stop the terrorists from crashing the plane, shooting down the plane can be the least worst option. It isn't the best outcome, but sometimes there are no good outcomes once the situation gets past a certain point. The main goal is to get eyes on the situation. If necessary, they'll shoot down the plane. It's better to kill the few hundred on the plane than potentially thousands on the ground. All they can do is shoot the plane down or wreck into it. Otherwise, it's just a bully tactic to comply. I've listened to an RAF aircraft intercept an aircraft not responding to ATC. After 10 minutes of trying to get in contact, They eventually broadcast on guard the standard statement that if you fail to follow my instructions, I am ordered to shoot you down. I have absolutely no question that the pilot was serious. The way they spoke was, quite honestly, haunting. A big reason, prior to 9/11 at least, was to track the whereabouts of the aircraft and maintain continuous monitoring on the condition of the aircraft, crew and passengers in general. An example of this is Helios 522, when the escorting F-16s visually confirmed that the crew were incapacitated due to loss of pressurization. The difficult part, of course, was that they had to watch the aircraft run out of fuel and crash. Unable to do anything. You can't be serious. It's obviously to shoot it down. How is this even a question? On 9/11, 2 of the US Air Force flights took off with no missiles. One female pilot was interviewed and she was ready to take the plane out with her plane ejecting just before it hit. What do you think actually happened to the 4th plane on 9/11? The heroic passengers taking over and crashing into the ground? Fuck no. Planes were hitting buildings. The government didn't know what was going on. And this plane was not obeying redirect orders. So they shot it down. For starters, getting eyes on the plane itself is invaluable. A lot of the times, if it's a flight experiencing damage, the fighter pilots may be able to clearly see the damage externally. If it's a different case, like a terrorist hijack, the fighter planes will shoot it down if they have to. No one wants the passengers to die, but if the plane is already in the air, then the only option is either that they die or that they and everyone on the ground die when the plane hits the target. So it's not just for the pilot to be taking selfies? Everyone is correctly saying that they will shoot the plane down, and yes, that is a big reason. Perhaps the main reason. However, don't ignore the other very simple reason that the fighter pilots can also get visibility into the cockpit. Simply seeing who is flying the plane gives a huge amount of important information to law enforcement on the ground, so they can shoot the plane down before it reaches its intended target. Preference given to destroying the plane if it heads for a more populated area or something critical, i.e. moving from single-family home suburbs towards a city center, a power plant, etc. USSR Air Force disagrees with you. They shot down a passenger jet, Korean Airlines Flight 007 in 1983, killing all 269 passengers on board. Jets absolutely will change the trajectory of a suspicious flight, in this case for the worse. There hopefully is a point where the collision is a given, and there is still time to eject. There is a ton of support on the ground that could give guidance on speed, angle of attack, and distance before ejecting. But having seen many videos of ejections, they are very fast and hopefully would be an option. If I were flying the plane, I would certainly axe. If not, then 20 feet from impact at 600 miles per hour. Pull the eject and hope for the best. Bro, WTF you think they gonna do? They are fighter jets. Fighter, that's like asking why the killer whales killer following that seal, because if the seal fuck up, it going down same damn thing, just in the sky and with missiles. In the worst case scenario, the jets can shoot down the plane, ideally over an unpopulated area, but in the vast majority of situations, it's to get eyes on the plane, asset the situation, and physically communicate with the pilots if no one is responding to radio. Most scrambles today are for when a small plane flies into a restricted space, such as wherever the president happens to be and isn't responding to radio. 2 military jets are a great way to get the pilot's attention quickly.